All right. Hey, everyone. First of all, thank you to the organizers for putting on this great event. Thank you all for coming here today. I am Cheeky Gorilla, and I'm here today to talk to you about the Protocol Guild. Actually, before we get started, how many of you have heard of the Protocol Guild before, by a show of hands? Nice. Good for you. All right. By the end of this, all of you will know about it. So, over the next 20 or so minutes, we'll talk about what is the Protocol Guild, why it needs to exist. Then we'll go into how our one-year pilot went, which actually just concluded. And then finally, we'll give you a sneak peek into the future about what we have planned for after the future. Sorry, after the pilot, that is. But before we talk about the Protocol Guild, let's talk about Ethereum, specifically Ethereum's Vision. Now, I'm sure each of you have your own unique takes on what Ethereum's vision is or should be, right? One vision could be for Ethereum to be a global network that empowers individuals, right? A protocol for human coordination, something that is uniquely enabled via programmable incentives in a way that was never really possible before. But for this vision to become a reality, right? For Ethereum to really maximize its impact, what needs to happen is that we need to incentivize talented individuals from all over the world to contribute to this open source project. But that's easier said than done, right? And this is why the Protocol Guild was created, to essentially enable a funding mechanism that can be used by both Ethereum's ecosystem and its community to fund this core protocol work in a way that provide strong incentives to onboard and retain these talented core protocol contributors over the long term. But why is this even needed in the first place? And as you all probably know, financial incentives are unfortunately never aligned towards public goods. And unfortunately, the same thing applies for Ethereum's core protocol work, which is a public good. Today, the vast majority of funding for this core protocol works comes from a handful of entities, Ethereum Foundation, Consensus, and others. And unfortunately, they only provide a fraction of the financial incentives that are otherwise available for other jobs in the ecosystem, like working for projects with tokens, apps, layer 2s, that kind of stuff. And so, essentially, what we have is a situation where Ethereum has enabled an ecosystem of all these valuable projects to be built on top of it. Now, in an ideal world, wouldn't it be amazing if some of that value could flow back to the core protocol work that all these projects depend on? And yet, even if that were the case, even if all these projects really did want to help fund Ethereum's core protocol development, how would you create a mechanism to actually distribute that funding to Ethereum's core protocol contributors in a way that's reasonably fair, right? That remains accurate over time and that maintains Ethereum's credible neutrality, right? To really emphasize the difficulty of designing such a mechanism, imagine that you were put in charge of distributing this ecosystem funding to Ethereum's core protocol contributors, How would you go about doing that? Would you go to Gitcoin and try to identify all of these, the core protocol teams there and donate to them there? Or would you get more involved, right, and go to the ETH R&D Discord, the Ethereum Magicians Forum, the Ethereum GitHub, all that kind of stuff, and basically try to identify who all these contributors are, and then somehow track down donation addresses for each one? How would you make sure you don't miss anyone? How would you make sure you don't mistakenly indicate someone as being an active contributor when in fact they are no longer actively contributing? For example, if you want to cheat and use ChatGPT to tell you who the Ethereum's core protocol contributors are, ChatGPT will tell you that Gavin Wood is one. And, Gavin Wood has not been active in Ethereum for some years now. The point that I'm making is that it's not super straightforward, right? Identifying and tracking these core protocol contributors is quite difficult. And to really highlight this fact, let's play a little game. How many of you can name one of Ethereum's core protocol contributors? Come on now. If you've ever heard of the name Danny Ryan, Justin Drake, Tim Bako, or Vitalik Buterin, your hand should be up. All right. Keep your hand up if you can name 10 of Ethereum's core protocol contributors. I see some hands. Good for you guys. Keep your hand up if you can name 50 of Ethereum's core protocol contributors. Did I lose the hands? I saw a wave. Who can name 128 of Ethereum's Core Protocol contributors? Why 128? Well, because the Protocol Guild has a list of 128 members. Each member represents an individual who is contributing to Ethereum's Core Protocol development. And some superstars said that you could identify some of these individuals today, which is awesome. But my question to you is, would you still be able to identify some of these individuals a few months from now? For example, in November 2023, right? Are you going to be following Ethereum's Core Protocol development closely enough to identify changes in this contributor set over time? How about a few years from now? How about a few years from now? I'm going the wrong way. There we go. A few years from now, 2030, will you still have a pulse on Ethereum's Core Protocol development? The reason why I ask these questions is not to shame you for not having this information. Most people don't, right? You really need unique context and domain expertise to be able to do this. Fortunately, as you've probably guessed by now, the Protocol Guild has a solution. And at the core of the Protocol Guild is a list, a membership registry of Ethereum's active Core Protocol contributors. These are all their names, right? 128 individuals from all over the world, each one of whom has been contributing to Ethereum's Core Protocol development for at least 6 months. Now, I should probably highlight, the Protocol Guild does not represent Ethereum's entire contributor set. Protocol Guild membership is voluntary. It's opt-in, so no one is obligated to join. Nevertheless, this list in isolation is not super useful, is it? So let's give it a little bit more context. These individuals are involved in all functions related to building and maintaining Ethereum's Core Protocol, right? This includes research, testing, security, implementation, coordination. You've probably heard of client teams like Geth and Aragon, Prism, Lighthouse. You may have heard of coordination teams like Ethereum Cat Herders. You may have heard of research group like the Robust Incentive Group. But the fact that some of these members are part of a team is actually irrelevant. Right? Protocol Guild membership is centered around individuals, not teams, because we want our members to have the flexibility to work independently if they so choose. Now, what makes this list special, this list of Ethereum's Core Protocol contributors, what makes it special is that it combines specific assurances and capabilities that ultimately make it an ideal funding mechanism for Ethereum's Core Protocol contributors, something that can be used by Ethereum's ecosystem and its community to fund this work in a very unique way that takes into consideration the past, the present, and the future. So let's talk about what some of those assurances are. The first one, as you can probably imagine, this list, this membership registry is on-chain, right? And that enables the funding mechanism because this list is tied to a single Ethereum address that anyone can donate funds to. So think about how much complexity has been removed here, right? We're providing a single Ethereum address that anyone can use to donate directly to 128 of Ethereum's Core Protocol contributors. But you might be wondering, how are those funds distributed? Well, they're distributed via a retroactive time weighting mechanism, which is a very fancy way of saying that the longer a member has been contributing to Ethereum's Core Protocol development, the higher their share of the donated funds. So this time weighting formula is actually a square root function of the number of months a member has been actively contributing, multiplied by either 1 or 0.5, depending on if they've been working full-time or part-time. Retroactive time weighting is very important here because we want to be able to recognize past contributions by these members and reward them accordingly. But this list is not only retroactive, it's also forward-looking. And it's forward-looking because it uses a vesting module to trustlessly distribute these funds over time, right? During our pilot, the vesting period was 1 year. After the pilot, all donations will vest over 4 years. This is important because it gives donors assurances that their entire donation won't all just be spent all at once, right? Rather, it'll slowly be distributed over time, which creates long-term incentives for these contributors to continue contributing, right? This facilitates knowledge handover and reduces contributor churn. So, now you know how this list can be used to receive funding and how that funding is distributed. But one important thing, who creates this list? Who maintains it? The list is self-curated, and by that I mean it is the existing membership who coordinate to add or remove members. Now, if you think about it, this makes the most sense, because the reality is most people don't have the necessary context to both curate and maintain this list over time, right? Even me, I spend almost every day thinking about the Protocol Guild, and I cannot name all contributors. On the other hand, and that's why you can't expect like an external entity or organization to basically create this list and maintain it over time. On the other hand, Protocol Guild's members, who again are Ethereum's Core Protocol contributors, due to the very nature of their day-to-day work, they have all the necessary context, all the necessary domain expertise to be able to curate this list. And so essentially, by delegating the responsibility of curation to the membership, we again have the highest assurances that this list will remain accurate, both now and in the future. Another interesting aspect of the Protocol Guild is that it is inclusive. The Protocol Guild is not an ETH maxi, and by that I mean ETH the token. Please donate ecosystem tokens. By donating different tokens, you basically enable Ethereum's Core Protocol contributors to benefit from the financial upside of these tokens in Ethereum's ecosystem, essentially allowing everyone to benefit from each other's success. The last attribute that I'll highlight today is that the Protocol Guild is a neutral funding mechanism, right? As the name implies, the Protocol Guild seeks to fund the protocol and not features of the protocol. This is why membership eligibility is broad enough to include all features related to Core Protocol development, related to building and maintaining the Core Protocol, but nothing beyond that. And also why all these functions are weighted equally. We need to maintain Ethereum's credible neutrality. We do not want to get into a situation where a wealthy entity can fund specific features of the Core Protocol that they benefit from at the expense of protocol functions. So, for all those reasons, we consider the Protocol Guild to be kind of like a magic list, something that is uniquely tailored to its purpose of very easily and very effectively funding Ethereum's Core Protocol development. And we encourage Ethereum's ecosystem and community to use the Protocol Guild as a sort of an open API for funding this work. But maybe, oh my, how do we jump so far? Let's go back a bit. But maybe you still need some reasons to donate. Let me give you some. Number one, are you building on Ethereum? Then you have a dependency on Ethereum, right? It might be for, I don't know, data availability, uptime, whatever else. By donating to the Protocol Guild, you are helping to rebalance incentives towards Core Protocol work to ensure that the protocol will always have maintainers to maintain the platform that you depend on. Donating to the Protocol Guild is also a great way to signal your support of Ethereum's values, right? Inclusivity, transparency, decentralization, all of these are inherited by the Protocol Guild. We also think it's a great channel for retroactive public goods funding, right? Given these protocol contributors' foundational impact on Ethereum's ecosystem. And of course, public goods are good, right? Ethereum's Core Protocol work is a public good. By donating to the Protocol Guild, you are helping to support public goods. Let's talk about our one-year pilot. It was inspired by a tweet from Daniel Ryan in October of 2021, calling on the community to establish the social norm that all projects built on Ethereum donate a portion of their tokens towards Core Protocol development. The Protocol Guild was launched a few months later in May of 2022, and here we are today, 12 months later. What happened during that time? The membership grew from 19 members to 128, it's actually 130 today. And that happened via the addition of 53 members and the removal of 15 members. And during this time, the ecosystem and community banded together to donate $10 million in value to the Protocol Guild, which is worth $12 million today. That was from almost 5,000 donations, but actually the vast majority of that came from Lido, Uniswap, ENS, NowsDAO, and MolokDAO. So shout out to them for seeding the pilot in its infancy. Of course, the Protocol Guild is not just about receiving funding, it's also about distributing it. Accordingly, the Protocol Guild has distributed $11 million in value to Ethereum's Core Protocol contributors, which is approximately $72,000 per member. Depending on where you live, that's a nice bonus. or it's a full-time salary. What have they been up to? You may have heard of the merge withdrawals. They've been pretty busy. They're working on scaling layer 2s by an order of magnitude, but they're working on all these amazing, really exciting things. But here I need to clarify, the Protocol Guild is not in any way responsible for the planning or execution of Ethereum's development roadmap. It is a funding mechanism to support the work that those individuals are doing. During the 12 months, we've learned a lot. Let's start with the positives. Given the amount of donations, it's fair to say that we've received buy-in from the ecosystem and community. We've gotten great feedback from members that today already the financial incentives are significant enough to be relevant in conversations to join or leave core protocol work. And we think the membership registry today represents an accurate snapshot of Ethereum's core protocol contributor set, so self-curation is working. There are things we can do better if we want to scale funding, and spoiler, we do. We need to make changes to our smart contract architecture to remove trusted components, right? We need to move our governance on-chain. It's off-chain right now. And of course, if we want to multiply our impact, we need to multiply our funding. So from our perspective, the pilot was a successful proof of concept, and now I'm very excited to tell you about what we have planned next. Protocol Guild V2, we've been working on it for a few months already, and there's 3 parts to Protocol Guild V2. Number 1, remove trusted elements. Right? We have some multi-sig dependencies that we need to get rid of. Number 2, we need to automate registry updates. And number 3, we need to expand the mechanism to layer 2s. We have planned to basically modularize our smart contract architecture. The first module will handle all finances, which will be done via smart contracts written by the team at 0x Splits. Shout out to them. They have vesting and distribution contracts that we use to manage all donations and to distribute the vested funds. The second module will be a Moloch v3 DAO. Shout out to EDCON and the DAO House crew for helping us with this. That will obviously be used for governing the membership registry. And lastly, we will have the actual on-chain membership registry itself, which lives separately from the DAO. And so very high level, the way it will work is existing members can join this, can join the DAO, the Protocol Guild DAO. 1 member, 1 vote. Members can create proposals to change the registry. There will be a voting period. Once passed and executed, it will update the on-chain membership registry, at which point a separate function can be triggered to mirror the registry into the vesting contracts such that the recipients are accurate. We're also looking into how to expand this mechanism to layer 2s. Do we consolidate all funds from layer 2s onto mainnet or let them live there? We're still trying to explore the best way to do this. If you have ideas, please reach out. The second part of Protocol Guild V2, we need to build this norm, right? We want to get to a place where every single project that builds on Ethereum donates 1% of their tokens, their profit, their revenue to the Protocol Guild to support core protocol development. Why? Because this is the only way that this mechanism will become self-sustaining. We cannot rely on fundraisers. We cannot rely on one-off governance grants, right? Let's get the ecosystem together to fund these things intuitively. Shout out to some of the trailblazers already doing that. And lastly, nope, lastly, come on, you can do it, go back 2 slides. That worked, oh, too far. We're gonna raise $100 million over 4 years, at least we hope so, right? That represents more or less a 2.5-fold increase for what we raised during the pilot, which was $10 million over 1 year. We think $100 million will put us a step in the right direction towards rebalancing incentives towards core protocol work. What we ultimately want to create is a situation where compensation for core protocol work is comparable on a risk-adjusted basis to work on, for example, apps or layer 2s. The 4-year vesting period will obviously help us retain these talented contributors over a longer time horizon. Now, 100 million, that's a target, not a limit. As long as we think this is a impactful funding mechanism for Ethereum's core protocol development, we will try to raise as much as we can with the help from Ethereum's community and ecosystem. When Protocol Guild V2? Too far. Here we go. When? Soon, right? Sorry, in true core protocol development fashion, it'll be ready when it's ready, which is soon though, so I guess follow us on Twitter. And that's it. Again, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for everyone who contributed to the pilot. It means so much to us. If you want to contribute in non-financial ways, please join our Discord. We have a channel called Contribute. We have a task list there of stuff that we're working on. There's not a ton of detail, but check it out. There may be something that interests you. You can get involved. We would love to have you. Thank you all again.